This is the first video in a series for Server 2008 Release 2 here at Lecture Snippets, and I wanted to start you off by letting you know how I'm actually installing the software, or where I'm actually installing it to, and actually being able to go through these lessons. And you can do the same thing at home if you're wanting to learn how to run the Server 2008 operating system. I use a software application called VirtualBox, and it's a free open source application that you can use to download to create virtual machines. If I go to the download section here, you can find that you can download it for pretty much any platform of operating system that you want to use for a computer. And I've already gone ahead and downloaded it, and I'm not going to show you how to download it because I'm assuming you might already know that. So let's get into the fact that after you have it downloaded and after you have it installed and running, I've got it right here. This is where you're going to go ahead and start up and create your first machine. I've got a couple here already. You can see yours will be blank if it's the first time you've ever ran this, but I'm going to go ahead and hit new. Go ahead and hit next, and I get to type in the name of the computer that I want to have, and this is just an identification tag for your preferences. I'm going to go ahead and just call it SRV-1, and this is going to be for my first server for these lessons. And so I'm going to go ahead now and choose the Windows 2008 64-bit. That's the actual operating system I'm going to be installing, Windows Server 2008, and it is a 64-bit one. I'll go ahead and hit next and basically choose the RAM, and I've got 8 gigabytes here to allocate for RAM. I don't want to allocate all 8 because then it leaves nothing for my host computer or the main computer that I have things installed on. So what I want to do is find a balance here between it, and I'm just going to go ahead and use a gig of RAM, which is going to be 1024 megabytes of RAM, and that'll be sufficient for the server. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I do want to create a new hard drive. You can see it recommends a 20 gig hard drive to begin with, and that's what I want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit next. These are the different file types that we have as available for us as options for hard disk types. And the native file type for this is VDI for VirtualBox, but if you do use other applications out there for virtual machines, you might want to look at a different option here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And dynamically allocated means that the hard drive will grow in size up to the maximum that we will set. This is great for the fact that if you've got 20 gigabytes allocated for your hard drive space and you're only using 5 of it, the file size will only be 5, and it will just keep growing, as opposed to fixed, which will go ahead and create a 20 gig file for you on your computer. And so this is the preferred, the dynamically allocated option for hard drive size. We're going to go ahead and hit next. You can see that it's going to create a hard drive here called SRV-1, which matches the name of the computer that I'm going to create. You can see it's 20 gigabytes. I'm going to go ahead and leave these as the defaults. Just go ahead and hit next and create. We get a summary here. I'm just going to go ahead and hit create on that one as well. And SRV-1 has now been created. A couple things that I want to do before I get started. To follow along on this series, what I'd like to do is make it so that the computer is plugged into pretty much just a switch without anything else attached to it. To show you what I mean by that is, this is the server here, SRV-1, and I want to set it up in a physical topology here to show you that it just is plugged into a switch. There's no other device that's going to be plugged in to start with. We're going to have a basic server, install the operating system on the server, and there's no other computers that it's going to talk to begin with. And one of the things that you're also going to notice is there's no way out to the internet. So one thing we will lose is the ability for the internet here on the settings we will be changing, but what it will allow us to do is to plug in multiple computers so that we can talk within our own intranet. And so this is the topology that I want to set up, and I'll show you how to set this up back on VirtualBox. And what we'll actually need to do is just go ahead and make sure that the computer is highlighted. We're going to go to settings, we'll go to network, and we're going to switch the network type here. We're going to switch this from NAT to internal network. And you'll notice the name of the default switch that we're going to be setting up for our internal network is going to be called IntNet. And I've got that on my topology there as well, as IntNet. That's going to be the name of the internal network, or I'm just going to reference it as a switch that we will all be plugged into. And so if I have multiple virtual machines, as long as they're all on the same internal network called IntNet, they'll all be plugged virtually pretty much into the same switch, and that'll allow all of our computers to talk together among themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change, and every computer that we will have on these lessons will be also put on this IntNet internal network that will allow them to be able to communicate back and forth between each other. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK on that, and now all I need to do is hit start to get going. What you will need in order to successfully follow along on the lessons is a copy of Server 2008 Release 2. and you may be able to find them from a textbook or from the internet. You may be able to find a download for this, and we're going to just use the trial version of this. We're just going to set it up for the trial period, but it will be a full functioning version of the server. If you hit next, you get the option here of where you want to actually install the media onto the virtual machine. And so we've created a virtual machine that says server 2008, but we actually need the actual software to install, just like you would on a real hardware piece. And so if I put it in my CD-ROM, I could pick the host drive. If you've downloaded an ISO file of the operating system, you could go ahead and browse for it and use the actual ISO file as your CD image. Either way, we need to have this to get going, and we're going to install the Server 2008 operating system in the next lesson.